Hi folks, I'm MurderStorm331 back to doing more streaming. This impromptu streaming, I'm going to be doing a guide about the game's magic system as well as its level up system. Final Fantasy VI was actually my first main Final Fantasy title I got into. My first Final Fantasy title was actually Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. That's of course a game meant to help people get into RPGs. And of course I still love playing Final Fantasy Mystic Quest even to this day, but if we're talking about main titles, Final Fantasy VI is actually my favorite thus far out of all the titles in the Final Fantasy series, for a pretty darn good reason. It came out during the time I was growing up too, so that also contributed. So anyway, today we're going to be learning about the magic and level up systems. And we're going to be going over not only the spells that you get from espers, but we're also going to cover the level up system, in which when you equip certain espers, you'll have the ability to gain stats when characters leveled up and all. So we're going to be trying to get all that done. I might make a separate guide for summons at a future date, but I would need to list all the battle power and get that scripted. I should probably warn everyone right now that this is not going to be scripted, by the way, so I'm going to probably screw up quite a bit in general. But the ultimate goal is to help beginners get into Final Fantasy VI, whether it be from past versions or the Pixel Remaster, which I'm playing, by the way, which offered a few changes to certain level ups nowadays for certain espers, and but that's all the quality of life changes that they applied to the Pixel Remaster. So anyway, we're going to be going over those as well as everything else that needs to be done outside the summons. So this is good grief, I'm already screwing up. Sorry, but anyway, this is meant to help beginners get into this game, and we're going to get started right now. So players won't have immediate access to magic. Only Terra, Celeste are the only party members that start off with magic when you get them. So basically, in Final Fantasy VI, once you gain access to espers, any and all of your party members outside Umaru and Gogo can learn magic by equipping espers, and they get different spells based on which ones you equip. Also, one thing to know is that all party members will not gain stat gains when they level up outside of HP and MP. So to do that, you do need to equip espers that can offer you a level up bonus. When your characters are equipped with the espers and level them up, they'll gain a stat bonus. And there's about at least 6 of them, which means you can get upgrades for HP, MP, Strength, Agility, Stamina, and Magic in that specific order. Now, of course, if you want to get your characters maxed out on 9,999 HP, you do need to have characters equipped with HP boosting espers. If you want your characters to have 999 MP, you're going to need characters that can equip them with espers that will boost up MP on level up gains. So basically, once you get to Zozo, find Terra, and meet Ramuh for the first time, you get your first 4 espers, which are Ramuh, Kyrian, Siren, and Catseath. During your time in the Magitech Research Facility and Factory, you'll encounter and get Ifrit, Shiva, Unicorn, Magyun, Cabalus, Phantom, Carbuncle, and Bismarck. So this is basically your starters espers during the World of Balance. You can get 3 more espers during the World of Balance, which consists of Golem, Zona Seeker, and Sephra. And then from here on out, starting in World of Ruin, the rest of the espers will become available once you find them or beat certain bosses or purchase them or whatever. You do need to search high and low for these espers. I will try to help out revealing where their locations, but just as a friendly reminder, you'll get these espers during your initial playthrough through the World of Balance. But the rest will have to be either fought, won, or found to get them into your inventory for access. And of course, each esper has different learn rates for their spells. Now, this slot right here is where Odin would normally be, but Since we turned him into Raiden, here his goes right here instead. So this blank slot's where Odin would normally be. And of course, each Esper has different learn rates and different level up gains. But before we get started with teaching spells, I do want to go over the fact that when you do have an Esper equipped, you can summon them in battle. While you're on the magic menu, press up and you'll be able to access that Esper. One key thing to remember is that you cannot summon Espers multiple times. They can only be summoned once per battle. So you have to wait until the next battle to summon it again. And of course, a lot of them will attack enemies, whereas some will provide buffs, healing, or debuffing enemies, or other features. Those are pretty self-explanatory. I'll probably do a guide of summons to go over battle power and the whatnot future date, but this guide's going to focus mostly on magic and level up systems. But before I do get started with going over the magic, I do want to go over the stats that you do gain for level ups. HP, which is needed to govern the amount of your character's endurance, represents HP gain. And if you don't have a very high HP gain, when that character hits 0, they will be knocked out until they're revived by either Phoenix Downs or Rise spells. So basically having more HP is always a good thing to have. 4 Espers give you about at least 4 different bonuses. Siren in particular gives you, and Catabolus will give you 10% HP increases. Midgard Dismore will also bestow you a 30% HP increase. And Bahamut, which you'll get right here, offers a 50% increase on level up. Now, even though it says 50%, it's actually not really a whole lot. Aside, in addition to the party member getting the stat gains, let's say if Sester was to get 75 HP per level up, if he was to equip Bahamut, he would get an additional 50 in addition to that. So that would boost his HP gain to 125. So it doesn't look impressive on paper, but having extra HP always pays off in dividends. Especially it gives you a little bit extra endurance to withstand enemy attacks and spells and whatnot. MP, of course, which is also known as mana points or magic points, governs the amount of covers your party member's spiritual levels. So if their MP is pretty high, they'll be able to cast a lot of spells. And given the fact magic is king in Final Fantasy VI, you're going to definitely want to have access to as much MP as possible. Phantom offers this on level up at 10%. Fenrir will offer a 30% increase on level up. And Crusader, which is probably going to be the last Esper that most people will get on their playthroughs, offers a whopping 50% increase on level up. Now, going over the 4 main stats that don't improve on level up until you equip the Espers, those are Strength, Agility, Stamina, and Magic. So Strength, of course, governs your character's ability to inflict damage with physical weapons or physical attacks. And this is kind of a must-needed thing for characters that do attack with regular weapons or special attacks that use physical strength as their primary damage dealer. Unfortunately, in Final Fantasy VI, this is kind of like an inferior stat for the most part. But on the flip side, though, some characters do use physical attacks. And if you're trying to fight enemies in the ancient castle, those guys have pretty high magic defense. So it's not a bad idea to have your party members get strength boosts every now and then to make sure their physical damage is up to par, so they can deal a lot more damage. Characters like Locke, Cyan, and Edgar can definitely get the most out of strength, but there are other characters like Sabin, Mog, Gao, Shadow can also run strength in addition to running magic as well. But anyway, if you have characters that prioritize strength, I would recommend boosting strength whenever possible. The Espers that bestow strength are Ifrit for strength +1. Bismarck boosts strength by 2 at level up. Now, in past versions, Raiden was the only one that offered another strength boost by 2. Here in the Pixel Remaster version, though, Alexander now boosts strength by 2 instead. But if you're playing the past versions, it's best to get Raiden as soon as possible for that. But if you're playing the Pixel Remaster like I am, Alexander now boosts strength by 2 instead. Agility is basically, when you think about agility or speed, it's supposed to basically give your party members more speed to dodge attacks and whatnot. Unfortunately, in Final Fantasy VI, this actually governs how fast your ATB metering fills up. Because you can't perform actions until your meter gets maxed out and you'll be able to perform your action. So the speed meter actually functions that. And as far as I've looked up online, this is about the only thing speed does in this game. So it's not really as great as it appears to be, but if you want your characters to get to more turns quickly, you definitely want to build up your speed stat. Some of your characters will need extra agility for to get their turns quickly. Like some of your slower characters like Stragos, Cyan, and Edgar would probably need this in general. But most of the party members are pretty fast on their feet for the most part. Anyway, Kotzel, my apologies if I said that wrong, offers a speed +1. This was originally Odin's bonus, and he was, for the longest time, was the only Esper that offered that stat boost. Of course, in other versions, Cactar can also provide +2 on speed. Here in the Pixel Remaster, Kotzel is the only Esper that provides a +1 on speed. And Odin and Raiden in this version of the Pixel Remaster offer speed +2. So now we can get more speed points now, which is actually pretty good because you would have to wait for a while before turning Odin into Raiden because you would need the speed increase. But thanks to the Pixel Remaster, both Odin and Raiden retain that same bonus. But keep in mind, this does not apply to past versions, because if you want more speed, you're either going to go for Odin, or for the versions that do have Cactar as a usable Esper, you're going to need to use that for your speed boost. And keep in mind, this only applies to the ATB meters for the stat in general. Stemna is probably considered to be a double-edged sword in this game, and it's widely despised by a lot of veteran players. Basically, what its main purpose is that Stemna is meant to basically improve your overall HP recovery. Now, the reason why it's considered a double-edged sword is because Stemna also governs the amount of damage players take when they suffer poison and sap damage. So this is also another reason why most people don't level up their Stemna, because they don't want to take too much damage. But I seriously doubt it really matters much, because when your characters level up, damage from poison and sap tend to increase as well. So even if you do boost up your Stemna either through level ups or equipment, I don't really think it really matters much. But if you want to get more HP recovery on regen, you would need to build this stat up. This stat also governs your party's likelihood to avoid instant death attacks. At least that's what I've read online and everything, but most people tend to avoid it mostly due to the poison and sap damage. So Stemna is kind of a double-edged sword, but if you want to avoid instant death attacks, this stat would be definitely a good increase to protect yourself. But for the most part, most people will usually either boost strength or magic for their level ups, and a few levels on either speed and HP and MP. So for the espers that do give you a Stemna increase, Ramu gives you a +1 on level up. Golem gives you a +2 on level up, and Lakashimi also gives you Stemna +2. Sorry if I didn't say that name correctly. Also, if you're playing the versions that have the additional espers of Leviathan, Leviathan also teaches Stemna +2 as well on level up. Magic, of course, is probably the most important stat in the entire game, because this game does heavily rely on magic, and you'll be using that quite a lot for a whole lot of your party members, especially those that are more gifted for blasting enemies with magic. Magic, of course, governs the amount of damage and healing that your party members use with their healing spells or attack spells. So you definitely want to keep your magic stat up to speed. Of course, there are some party members that have pretty low magic stat when they start off with, but some of the party members that do join up do have very high magic stats. So given the fact that magic's going to be used throughout your entire adventure, it's not a bad idea to have all party members build up their magic stat whenever possible. So the espers that give you magic for level ups are Catsif, Mijun, Sona Seeker for +2, and Valgramanda, who also teaches magic +2 on level up. So that goes over most of the stats in the entire game. So we're going to go over and go over the spells real quick, but let me take a small water break real quick so I can refresh my throat, because we're going to be covering a lot of spells here. Alright, in addition to learning the spells, I will give you the locations or enemies that you might need to obtain these espers. And we'll go ahead and start off with the first 12 that the party's players are more likely to get in general. Ramu is actually a very important esper in this game. Is one of the first 4 that we do get. We'll meet him in Sozo, and we also get the other 3 espers as well right after the cutscene with him. So Ramu being a Thunder Element esper, he teaches Thunder at times 10, Thundara times 2, and Poison at times 5. Now, I kind of realized I forgot to mention this, but once you get espers, you'll start earning ability points or AP, and each monster formation usually has its own set of AP that your party will win. There are some early game monsters that will not give you AP, like fighting 3 rare rats, and for versions that do have Dragon's Den, none of the monsters in there will give you any AP. Now, one of the party members does use AP, will get AP, despite not having any espers, but I'll go over that in a separate guide for a different time. But anyway, the whole gist of AP is that your party members will learn, build up their spell learning progress, and based on their learning rate, some spells will be quickly mastered, whereas some will take a lot more longer. And this is also applies to the multiplier you see right there for the accusation rate. So if Setzer was to equip Ramu and be an enemy formation that gives out 3 AP, what happens after that is that the AP gets multiplied with the learning rate, the accusation rate. So in that scenario, if Setzer was learning magic from Ramu, he would get his accusation rate for Thunder would be improved by 30%. Thundara would go up by 6%, and Poison would go up by 15%. And of course, with these, I should also point out that Ramu is the only esper in the entire game that teaches Poison, which is kind of ironic being a Thunder element. And Ramu is actually one of the 2 only espers that teach Thundara, but this and Majun are probably the only ones with a very low learn rate. It's actually baffling that Ifrit and Shiva learn Faram Blizzara times 5, which is kind of ironic. But he's actually one of your 2 sources for Thundara, and earlier on, Thundara is actually going to be a very reliable spell for the Magitech Research Facility and Factory. So it's probably best to have that, get the spell right off the gate here. Overall, if you need your earlier Thunder Magic and Poison Magic, Ramu is definitely the best esper for that for the time being. Kirin, which is also acquired in the same cutscene that you get Ramu, is our first esper that gives us access to healing magic, for the most part. Here, Kirin will teach Cure by times 5, Cura at times 1, Regen at times 3, Poison at times 4, and Libra at times 5. Kirin's the only esper in the entire game that teaches Poisona and Libra. Libra is also known as scan and pass localization versions. Poisona is our early healing spell to cure poison, but that gets actually replaced by Ensuel a little bit later. But if you need to scan enemies, you'll definitely need access to Libra right here, and this esper you'll probably acquire at the same time that you get access to Cure. Siren, which is our first debuffing Esper, teaches Sleep at times 10, Silence at times 8, Slow at times 7, and Fire at times 6. Technically, Siren actually has some pretty good learning rate spells. There are some, even though enemies do have a lot of resistance against Sleep, Silence, and Slow, for the enemies that are not immune to those, these can be useful. Silence in particular is going to be very useful against Holy Dragon and the magic portion of the Statue of the Deities during your final battle with Kefka. And there are some enemies that are actually susceptible to sleep. If you do need more info on monsters on the Pixel Remaster version, just check out your Bible tree and you'll get a good rundown as to what they're strong against and find out which ones they're actually susceptible to. But anyway, this Esper is our first accusation to fire. That's also going to be very good earlier on once you get it. Cat's Teeth, of course, teaches another round of debuffing spells as well as a support spell. He'll teach Confuse at times 7, Imp times 5, and Float times 2. For a long while, Cat's Teeth is going to be our earliest float gain for the time being, but we'll eventually get Quetzal later on, and he teaches that at a very higher learn rate than Cat's Teeth, but I would recommend giving it to party members that cannot equip Gaia gear. Ifrit and Shiva, which these espers you'll acquire them during your go through around the Magitech factory. You will have to face off both of them before you get their magicite remains, though. So when you do get access to Ifrit, he'll teach party members Fire at times 10, Fire at times 5, and Drain at times 1. So Ifrit's the only Esper that teaches Drain for the most part, and he teaches Fire very good high learning rate. Shiva, of course, is also acquired at the same time you get Ifrit. She teaches Blizzard by times 10, Blizzard at times 5, Rasp and Osmos at times 10, and Cured times 3. Shiva actually has some pretty good coverage outside of, not only gives you your first access to Ice Magic, but also gives you an early access to Osmos and Rasp, which are very good spells. Osmos being more reliable to recover MP than Ethers in this game, to be honest. And of course, the next Espers we get are from the ones we get after we beat number 24 and try to rescue the Espers thereafter. So the first one we get is Unicorn. This is also another healing Esper. This one teaches Cura at times 4, Ensua at times 3, Dispel at times 2, and Protect and Shell at times 1. Dispel, Unicorns are only earliest access to Dispel. But it's at a very low learning rate, so until you get Alexander, this is actually the only Esper in the entire, for a long while, that gives you this this important spell. But technically there's better Espers to teach Protect and Shell, and there's actually an Esper that, 2 Espers that actually teach Insua at better learn rates. But technically Unicorn's sort of a sight for sore eyes for a better learn rate for Cura, though. There's another Esper that actually outdoes Unicorn pretty much. Magiune, of course, I won't go into spoilers, is another Esper related to one of the party members in this game. And when you get his Magicite remains, he'll teach Farah, Lysera, and Thundara at times 3. Aside from Ramu, he's probably the better one to learn Thundara pretty quickly. Cowball, of course, teaches you some offensive debuff spells. He will learn Bio at times 8, Break at times 5, and Death at times 2. Of course, Bio is actually more stronger than Poison, and I would strongly recommend most of your party members get access to this spell. Because, unfortunately, it does not have a tier 3 spell in this game. So, Bio is probably your best hard-hitting Poison spell that you do need, even though there's not a whole lot of enemies that are actually strong against it. Phantom teaches you a variety of support spells in addition to the gravity spell. So this Esper will teach you Berserk and Vanish at times 3. It's the only Esper that teaches that. And Gravity at times 5. Carbuncle teaches you a lot of buffing spells. You'll get Reflect at ×5, Haste, which is our earliest access to this spell, at ×3, Shell, Protect, and Teleport at ×2. Carbuncle's our only Esper early in the game that teaches Teleport, though we can probably get this more faster with Fenrir, though, later on in the World of Ruin. Bismarck teaches you a number of beginner offensive spells in addition to a minor healing spell. You get access to Fire, Blizzard, and Thunder at ×20, and Rise at ×2. Technically, you'll be using this Esper more for strength boosting rather than to teach spells. But technically, if you want to get your earlier attack spells early, Bismarck's actually pretty much the best one to get. Now, of course, as I mentioned, all Ifrit, Shiva, Unicorn, Myajun, Catabolus, Phantom, Carbuncle, and Bismarck can be acquired during your trek through the Magitech Factory Research Facility in Vector. Golem and Zona Seeker can be acquired at the Jador's Auction House. There is a manipulation that can speed up the process of getting these Espers early without having to go through trying to buy items. You will need money to purchase the next following 3 Espers, a grand total of 33,000 gil to be precise. Golem, which you'll get for 20,000 gil at the auction house, teaches Protect, Stop, and Cura at ×5. Golem's our earliest access to Stop earlier on, and he has a better learn rate of Protect than some of the Espers that teach at lower rates. He also has a pretty decent learn rate for Cura as well. You also get Zona Seeker at the Jador Auction House for 10,000 gil. He teaches Rasp, Osmos, as like Shiva does, but teaches him at a very high learn rate. Rasp at ×20, Osmos at ×15, and Shell at ×5. Sephira, which you can buy from a thief NPC at Tenzin, near the Relic Store, is another healing Esper. You'll have to purchase that for 3,000 gil. If you choose not to get that by the time you go to the World of Ruin, he'll sell that for 10 gil instead. But it's probably best to get this Esper because this one teaches a large amount of your good healing spells at very high learn rates. He'll teach Rise at ×5, Cura at ×8, Cura at ×20, Regen at ×10, and Ensua at ×4. And technically, Sephira has the best Ensua learning rate at the time being for the most part. So this covers all the Espers you will get at World of Balance. Now it's time to go over start covering the Espers you do get in World of Ruin. Quetzal, which you'll acquire after getting the Falcon and returning to the stationary island, which is where Celeste starts off in World of Ruin, teaches you a number of buffing spells. He will teach party members how to use Haste and Slow at ×20. He's also our only Esper that teaches Hastega and Sloga, both of them at ×2, and Float at ×5. Fenrir, which you'll get upon going to Moblis for the first time in World of Ruin, and beat Famaba for the first time, and getting it from one of the kids after that. He'll teach your party Teleport at ×10, Banish, which is the only Esper that teaches this spell, by the way, at ×5, and Stop at ×3. Technically, if you want your party members to master Teleport, this is probably the best Esper to start learning this from. Valgramanda, which you'll get for defeating Valgramanda at Narsh in the World of Ruin, teaches Faraga, Blizzaga, and Thundaga at ×1. Now, Phoenix is the only Esper that teaches Faraga, and Valgramanda is the only Esper in the entire game that teaches Blizzaga and Thundaga. I would strongly recommend getting these spells mastered for all your party members that can learn them. Of course, if you're going to get Umaro to join your party, you'll need to fight Valgramanda anyway, by the way. Midgard Dismor is our next Esper. You'll get this from finding it in a bone carving in the Yeti Cave. This will also trigger the boss fight with Umaro as well. This Esper in general teaches you a lot of high damaging spells that targets just about almost the entire enemy and player's party as well. with the sole exception of Graviga. Anyway, he'll teach your party Quake at ×3, Graviga and Tornado at ×1. Now, Quake and Tornado are very dangerous spells. There's not a whole lot of protection against instant death spells, so that means your party could be put into critical danger, which is pretty dangerous. But if you're heck bent on activating desperation attacks in this game, Tornado is probably a good way to do that, but I wouldn't advise it. But if you want access to Earth spells, Quake is definitely the best way to go. Just make sure your party has float applied. And of course, Graviga is actually way stronger than Gravity, because this will reduce mobile targets' HP by 3/4 of their current HP, for the most part. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. Anyway, Lakashimi can be acquired at Jador's mansion once you defeat Chatternook there and investigating the bookcase. This is another healing esper. This one teaches Cura at ×25, Cura at ×16, Curaga at ×1, Regen and Insula at ×20. So Lakashi is going to be our earliest access to Curaga, but Phoenix teaches that a little bit more better than Lakashi, but still, this is still a good esper to start learning Curaga, though. Because at this point in the game, when you get to the World Ruin, enemies will probably do more damage than you can heal with Cura for the most part. Alexander, which you get for defeating Raxol and Cyan's Dreamscape and Domo Castle. You'll find this magicite on the throne when you wake up. So go to the throne room, pick it up, and you'll get access to the Alexander Esper. Aside from a new level up upgrade, Alexander teaches Holy at ×2, Shell and Protect and Dispel at ×10, and Insula at ×15. Now, Alexander is the only Esper in the entire game that teaches Holy, so I would recommend all party players to have all of your party members learn Holy, because that will be your go-to source for Holy damage for them. Phoenix, which you'll get after completing the Phoenix game and getting locked back on your party, and after seeing the cutscene that occurs right after that, teaches mostly healing spells in addition to Faraga. Phoenix will teach party members how to use Rise at ×10, Arise at ×2, Re-Rise at ×1, Curaga at ×2, as well as Rise, and Faraga at ×3. So this Esper can teach party members to get access to Faraga pretty early. This is also the only Esper in the entire game that teaches Arise and Re-Rise. And this Esper is also way better to acquire Curaga than Lakashi for the most part. You'll get it at the same time that you get Arise, though. Now, Odin, who would be right here, can be acquired in the ancient castle upon examining his petrified remains. So you'll get his magicite remains. He teaches Meteor at ×1, and also provides speed +2 as well. But technically, Crusader teaches Meteor at a better learning rate than Odin does. And plus, we're going to be swapping him out for Raiden once we explore more of the ancient castle, which I'll get to in a minute. Bahamut, which you'll get upon defeating Deathgaze and from fighting him, bestows Flare to party members at ×2 learning rate. This is actually probably one of your best hard-targeting single target spells that you get in your entire game. Sadly, it doesn't ignore defense, though, but it's still a pretty hard-hitting spell, though. Ragnarok is acquired from the weapon store merchant in Narsh. You can only get access to the store once Locke rejoins your party, so you'll need to complete the Phoenix Cave first before you can go over there and pick up this magicite. He will offer a chance to give you the Sword Ragnarok if you choose to forge it into a sword instead. But I tend to get this as the magicite, because that way my party members can start learning Ultima as well. And combine that with the Decursed Paladin Shield, you can get this spell at a ×2 learning rate as opposed to the ×1 learning rate you see right here. But anyway, Ultima is Ragnarok's the only esper in the entire game that teaches Ultima, and it's arguably one of the best multi-targeting spells in the entire game, being non-elemental damage at most. Crusader is probably the last esper most players will get, and this will be acquired by defeating all 8 of the 8 dragons that make up the Eightfold Seal, preventing its release. Upon getting access to Crusader, your party will learn Meltdown at ×1 and Meteor at ×10. Crusader is the only esper in the entire game that teaches Meltdown. Raiden, which you'll get by upgrading Odin to Raiden from examining the Queen's petrified remains in the ancient castle basement, teaches your party quick at ×1. And this is probably one of the best support spells in the entire game because it gives party members 2 actions to perform and gives you a whole lot of options as well. So anyway, now that we covered the espers, it's probably a good idea to actually start going over what spells to pick up, and I would strongly recommend. Now, one of the cool things about Final Fantasy VI is that you can have all of your party members master every spell in the entire game, and there is no restrictions whatsoever. The only restrictions would be if the player wants to restrict themselves to only having required spells needed to get through the game in general. And of course, for any spells that the party members do not master, you'll see how much accusation rate they have right here. So for the most part, we'll go over and cover white magic first, then black magic, and then we'll cover the pretty much the time/assist magic. Not really sure what it's called here in Final Fantasy VI, to be honest, but the gray ones are basically your buffs, debuffs, etc. So if you want my recommendations, I would recommend having all of your party members master all the cure spells available. Initially, you will have access to Cure initially, but you definitely want to start upgrading to Cura as soon as possible. Given the fact Locke and Celeste are going to be in your party when you go to the Magitech factory and facility, I would strongly recommend having those 2 characters master Cura first, and then wait until you get access to Sephiroth and Golem and Unicorn to master Cura quickly. So once you get access to Phoenix and Lakishi, on the other hand, start having all of your party members master Cura. Of course, Arise, and Re-Arise should also be mastered too. These spells are going to be very useful to revive your party members. Re-Rise is very good to give your party members a quick revival if they get taken out with powerful magic like the Magic Master's Ultima, or the 3rd tier's Repose attack, which will instantly kill off your party members. This spell is actually very reliable. Regen is kind of needed if you're going to go into long dragon battles, even though summoning Chiron is probably more better. But still a very good must-have spell to keep your party, get their HP recovered until your party members get turns to heal themselves. And so is a definite must because that'll cure most status elements, though there are some status elements that require other means to cure. But Enso covers most of it. Of course, Poison is pretty good to cure poison, but I don't really consider that a much needed spell, because Enso covers most of that. For attacking spells, I recommend upgrading all of your Fire, Blizzard, and Thunder spells when they become available. This will be extremely vital because you will be using Fire, Ice, and Lightning damage for elemental weaknesses, and they're going to be needed throughout the entire game. So once you get access to the 2nd tier and 3rd tier spells, I recommend getting those immediately. Bio is actually your best poison spell, and I would recommend getting access to that immediately. Break and Death are optional, but they're very, really good during Floating Continent because a lot of the enemies on there are either susceptible to Petrify or Death. Perfect examples, Dragon and Behemoth are actually susceptible to Death spells, whereas Ninjas and Platinum Dragons are actually susceptible to Break. Of course, they're not very reliable in World of Ruin because a lot of enemies will have a large amount of status protection. But they're actually pretty good for to have when you're on the Floating Continent for the most part. Holy, of course, once that becomes available, should be learned by all party members. You will be fighting a lot of undead monsters and any enemies that are susceptible to Holy, so this spell is going to be very useful to deal with those enemies. Flare is your best single targeting non-elemental damage spell. I would strongly recommend getting access to that, as well as having access to Ultima. This is your best multi-targeting non-elemental damage spell that you get access to. It's very great overall. Now, of course, I don't have it on here, but if you want to get coverage for Earth damage, Quake is also another option to take into consideration. But I should warn you, if you don't have access to the float spell, that spell will probably be a double-edged sword against your party. But if you're willing to equip party members that are capable of equipping Gaia gear, in addition to casting float, that should be no problem. But if you do need something to cover Earth weakness, Quake is definitely something you want to pick up. Now, for debuffing and buffing spells, I would strongly recommend getting Sleep and Silence, even though a large amount of enemies do protect themselves. As I mentioned earlier, Silence is very useful against Holy Dragon and the magic part of the second tier of the Statue of the Deities. You'll definitely want to have access to that so that you can stop them from casting the more annoying spells that they use. Sleep is also effective against some enemies, like number 24, but this won't have a whole lot of use later on. But it's good against enemies that are susceptible to that, and I would recommend having that on hand just in case. Protect, Shell are definitely must-haves because these will lower the amount of damage your party takes from physical and magical damage for the most part. Haste, of course, is definitely a must-have, as well as Hastega, because you'll want to get your party members speed up to get their chances to attack as fast as possible, especially during boss fights, and get party members to heal up as quickly as possible. Now, Confuse is optional. There are some enemies that are susceptible to Confuse, and you could probably use that to get lures for Strago for the most part, but there are other means to get those lures as opposed to using this method. So this one's more optional. But of course, if you want your party members to get access to early float, though, you will have to go through learning Imp and Confuse. Speaking of Imp, I would strongly recommend learning this just in case you run out of green cherries and need something to cure Imp status. And of course, if you want to make sure your party members are wielding Imp gear, being an Imp may not be a bad idea. Float, of course, is definitely a must-have. You'll definitely want this to protect your party members from Earth-based damage, especially from Quake and Magnitude 8, for the most part. Stop, of course, has some pretty good implications. It's definitely a must-have if you're going to try to add Integer into your Bibistry, and you'll definitely need powerful physical fighters because Integer is pretty much has tons of HP, and you'll need to reapply Stop every now and then because that monster is the only one susceptible to Stop. There are a few other monsters that are susceptible to Stop, so having that on hand is not a bad ideal. Berserker is somewhat okay. The real reason why you want to master that, though, is mostly to fight Magic Master, so he can't use change his elemental weakness or cast any more spells on the party. I would strongly recommend having at least one or a few party members that have that accessibility to the spell, but I wouldn't recommend having that on hand for the most part. So that spell is only going to be useful against the Magic Master. Reflect is optional unless you're going through the Cultist Tower, of course, and didn't bother to purchase Reflect Rings, but it's good for certain situations. Of course, already made clear Shell is definitely a must-have. Vanish, on the other hand, I would strongly recommend because if you want to train your party members one by one through level ups, this is a good spell to have against enemies that are more likely to use physical attacks than magical attacks for the most part. But that's only for leveling up party members solo. And of course, Hastega is definitely a must-have. Slowga is kind of an optional one as well because a large amount of enemies will start resisting slow status. Osmos is definitely a keeper because that'll be your go-to MP restoration for the most part. And as long as you're not using that against undead enemies, this is actually a very good spell to have. Now, of course, Rasp is also another optional spell to have. There are some enemies that will die when their MP reaches 0, so it's definitely a good thing to have. If you're playing against going to Dragon's Den and refighting the Skull Dragon, you will need access to the spell to destroy Skull Dragon with. Ultimate Weapon is also another candidate for destroying him through MP loss. which is also another good way to have, but that'll take forever. Dispel is also a good thing to have as well because that'll cure Berserk status, and it's definitely a must-have for that situation, as well as remove any positive buffs enemies might have on themselves. And Teleport's a good thing to have to escape battles and get out of dungeons. And of course, once you get access to Quick, which is also another spell I would recommend, that would make your party insanely broken, because that could be used to inflict tons of damage or assist the team in multiple ways that you can not do on your own. So these are basically all the spells and stat bonuses for the entire party. So that's pretty much it for the leveling up system and the magic/magicite magic system for this game. Anyway, if you enjoyed this content, feel free to sub to both my Twitch channel and my YouTube channel, where I'll be putting all my highlights nowadays. So once I get through this stream, I will be highlighting this channel and exporting that over to YouTube, where you can view it for everyone to check it out. If you like all this content you see, again, be sure to like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to or follow my Twitch channel as well. And I'll be doing more guides for Final Fantasy VI in the near future. I will try to get a summons guide so you can know what to expect when using them. I know I didn't do a whole lot of discussion on that, but we will cover that eventually. But I will do some beginner guides for all party members for Final Fantasy VI. Those will be coming out at whenever I get a chance to do them, but I expect to see more of these in the near future. I'm RotorStorm331 signing off. Have a great day. Take care, and I will see you all later today.